Madame la Présidente,
Madam Chair, dear Isabelle, Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, members of the European Parliament, Chairman, Chairwomen, ladies and gentlemen, directors, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to be in front of you this morning on behalf of Thierry Baudet, who's the chairman of the Economic and Social Council. He is currently abroad and apologizes for not being with you. Hosting the REIF conference in this place, it's a strong symbol, as our chairperson will tell you. It's a symbol because the CESE, the Economic, Environmental and Social Council, is a place in front for social dialogue and social democracy, where we can share opinions, agree and disagree sometimes, and share our beliefs in the respect of everybody else's opinion and in the respect of the general interest. It's a civil society body for French society, and it's also a place where we can find demanding compromises. It is made up of 175 members representing workers, trade unions, employers, representatives, associations, mutual insurance companies, companies working in the social and solidarity economy, artisans, shopkeepers, etc. It is the third body of the Republic, together with the National Assembly and the Senate, and the CESE was reformed recently with a desire to leave more room for citizen involvement into all the works meant to be used by public decision makers and by the whole French society at large. The nature of all three chambers are different, of course, but I'm sure that in many other countries there are economic and social councils who recently got together here in this forum, chaired by the French presidency of the European Union, in order to think together about synergies and joint positions. Our assembly works on all economic, social, environmental topics, and it is very natural for us to work on the topic of social protection. You have been able to see some of our work published in the form of opinions or reports. And some of these work actually covers part of the topics of your discussion today. There is an opinion on the national policy for health and environment, and the opinion called New Generations. It's about building solidarity for tomorrow. You will also find papers published about public hospital, home working with the most vulnerable people, chronic diseases, price and access to innovative medical treatment. You will also be able to find papers written about poverty or minimum wage, which it was my honor and privilege to lead. This is a summary of the work that we conduct here on a daily basis to ensure solidarity, social protection, and to always go further in the area of social progress. We are slowly coming out of an unprecedented health crisis, a crisis that will have changed the focus of our concern and led us to look at how hospitals are managed and how dependent we are on foreign countries for our medication and drug. And this crisis highlighted the role of our social system and of our health system. We have challenges ahead of us, many challenges. Population aging, new expectations in terms of health, personalized care, journey, protection of the most fragile persons. And conferences like this one bring together a lot of different players and enable us to have discussions about our approaches. And of course, such conferences are key for us. I wish you a very fruitful discussion, and I thank you for choosing to hold this conference here, which is one of the linchpins of our democratic system. Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, members of the European Parliament, chairmen, chairwomen, ladies and gentlemen, directors, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it's with great pleasure that I open this conference whose title is full of meaning in today's world, Accompanying Generations, a Challenge for Social Security both in France and in Europe. This high-level conference is organized by the European representation of French social security bodies, REIF, and I am the chairperson of this association, and this is why I am here in front of you this morning. REIF highlights the values of and interests of social security with the European Union. We've been doing this for about 19 years. The fact that France now has the presidency of the Council gives us a good opportunity to promote even more a social Europe that concretely protects all European citizens. The topic of this conference is broad enough to address all the challenges that all European social security systems have to face. Autonomy and aging of the population, fight against poverty, responsiveness of the social security systems in the face of the COVID, access to innovation in healthcare and price regulation, fair mobility of workers. It means that you will have 4 round tables that will, I'm sure, foster very rich discussions among high-level experts. I would like to thank warmly the Economic, Social and Environmental Council, Mr. Thierry Baudet, its chair, and Madame Martine Vigneault, who's the vice chair, who have made it possible for us to organize this event in this very symbolic place where social partners and civil society discuss on a regular basis. I also want to thank the REIF teams for organizing the event, and I also want to thank all REIF members for their involvement. And I wish you a very good day, and I hope it will be fruitful. Thank you very much. Good morning, Madam Vice President, Mr. President of the Employment Commission, Madam Chair of REIF. I would like to thank REIF for organizing this conference on a topic which is very relevant today. No need to insist on the political, economic and social context, which is very harsh on all of us and which is very new. We have structural challenges in terms of social protection, aging of the population. We have been through difficult times because of the pandemic, which is not over yet, by the way. And on top of that, we now have to suffer the consequences of this absolutely criminal war in Ukraine. As you know, the European Union responded to Russia's aggression in Ukraine with unity and solidarity. We deployed sanctions towards Russia and also financial and humanitarian aid to Ukraine. We now have to support and welcome millions of refugees while preserving our social fabric and our social protection systems in all our member states. I have to say that the directive on temporary employment grants access to social services, social protection, education to these refugees who we welcome on our territory. In such a context, it is even more necessary now to reinforce our social protection systems in order to contribute to make our societies more inclusive and more resilient. Besides, we realized that a resilient social protection system and a robust social protection system is key and vital for our societies and also for our economies. I think that in that respect, the pandemic taught us a certain number of things, especially in terms of our healthcare systems. In order to reach our objectives of having a robust social protection system that covers all risks, it is obvious that we need European economies to pick up, and we need to regain sufficient growth in the context of a more sustainable economy, of course, and more respectful of climate, among other things. And the European Union has launched exceptional measures also with the Resilience and Recovery Plan. This is a huge investment, which of course is earmarked towards green transformation in order to face climate challenges, in order to meet also technological challenges. But we also have social challenges to face, and I am very pleased to see that a great part, 30% of investments carried out in the context of the national recovery and resilience plans will be allocated to social investment. And it is very important because Europe needs economic convergence, but Europe needs social convergence just as much. Europe needs all our social protection systems to be reinforced and strengthened in all member states. In order to face the consequences of COVID-19, social protection expenditures have increased by 8% in 2020, which is 234 billion euros in the 19 member states for which we have data. Now, this exceptional mobilization led to an improvement in the unemployment rate, for one thing. We do see today that after a rise in unemployment due to the pandemic, which was rather moderate, I must say, we now have reached the unemployment level that we had pre-pandemic, and we are actually below that level. And this is the case in particular for young people unemployment, and this, I think, is something that we should be happy about. We have to say that what European did in terms of part-time unemployment in particular was a good way to efficiently absorb the impact of the crisis on employment. All member states have implemented part-time unemployment schemes, and 19 member states decided to use an instrument which was set up very rapidly, that had a budget of 100 billion euros to preserve employment, to preserve jobs. And it also made it possible for thousands, tens of thousands of companies to survive, in particular smaller and medium-sized companies. My service conducted an analysis that says that the crisis would have a much more negative impact on the poorest households if we hadn't carried out this intervention. 40% of the poorest European households would have experienced a significant drop of their income, around 6%. Thanks to the social transfer scheme, the impact was limited to less than 1%. We still have a certain number of challenges to face, especially in France, such as, for example, integration into the job market of the most vulnerable populations who have been severely impacted by the pandemic. So we are facing this new challenge. We see that energy prices have increased and food prices have also increased, and these two factors impact the same groups of population. A lot of countries are currently implementing active policies to minimize the impact of price increase on the less privileged households and families. So poverty hasn't increased so much in France, but the situation of the most fragile populations has deteriorated. I'm speaking in particular about the people with the smallest level of qualifications, people coming from immigration, people with disabilities, and generally speaking, all those people who are in a condition of precariousness and poverty. I'm talking about social poverty, and I'm talking about job poverty as well. People who find it difficult to find a job. We are also facing an aging of our population. By 2050, more than 27% of the French population will be 60 or older. The estimated number of people benefiting from long-term care will go from 1,265,000 in 2015 to more than 2 million in 2050, which represents a 76% increase. In order to improve the care that we provide to these elderly and handicapped people, France is going to set up a system covering the risk of loss of autonomy inside the general social security system. And I must say that the European Commission is very supportive of this reform in the framework of the Recovery and Resilience Fund of Europe. The whole healthcare policy, and you know this, Mr. Chairman of the Employment Commission, because we had a great debate on the healthcare policy yesterday. So this is going to be the subject of a strategy, healthcare strategy, that will be published this year by the European Commission. And we will also issue a recommendation to member states regarding healthcare policies. We know that healthcare policies, both in terms of taking care of the people, reimbursement of care, quality of jobs, number of jobs, recognition of the healthcare jobs. We know that these are fundamental issues in all European states. So, as I usually say, it is a fundamentally European topic which I'm sure we can give and provide solutions to at the scale of Europe. And our member states have a lot to learn from one another in that area. In order to face the challenge of population aging in Europe, we have to work harder and we have to improve our social protection systems. It is necessary if we want to ensure the social and economic safety of all our citizens. But there's also something I have to say about what is happening even before our social protection systems come into play. I think that what is happening before social transfer policies come into play, we have to try to fight against all forms of poverty and precariousness, especially in the area of employment. This impacts young people mostly, but not only. The Commission made an important proposal on which we are actively working with the French presidency regarding minimum wage, decent minimum wage, that is. We have also something which is becoming more and more urgent, especially now in the context of the refugees flowing into our countries. We have to work on housing, affordable housing. So minimum wage, actions on the job market, social housing, the fight against homelessness, and all these things will make it possible for us to better fight against poverty at large. And we must ensure that we do not continue to increase inequalities in our societies. Social protection as such is at the heart of European social rights. You know, salaried workers and in comparable conditions, non-salaried workers have the right to receive proper social protection no matter the length and duration of their work. This was an approximate quotation approximately translated by the interpreter who did not have the text. So we know that there is subsidiarity in this area, and we ensure that the systems are better coordinated. But at the end of the day, these matters depend on national situations and national decisions. And of course, it's an area where it is necessary to converge as much as possible. And I would like to remind you of the recommendation on access to social protection that was adopted many years ago, and that recommends that we have a broader social protection that should be extended to all categories of populations. You know, I've talked about the most underprivileged categories. We're talking about independent workers, for example, or workers with special regimes. So we do see today that millions of independent freelance workers or with what we call a special regime are not covered by social protection, especially in terms of health care coverage and also protection against accidents. And of course, we issued a recommendation. We have invited the member states to present their strategies because reports were written to demonstrate how these categories can be better covered. But we also suggested to issue a new directive on platform work because a lot of these freelance or independent or so-called independent workers for the moment do not have access to social coverage, social protection, and I think it's really important to ensure that these workers, who very often are young people, have rights, social protection rights, and also rights in terms of labor law and labor rights, ensuring access to high quality care, affordable at all periods in their life. This is also a key aspect in our action plan regarding social rights. The objective is also to provide decent work conditions for professionals working in healthcare and social protection, because the working conditions are paramount in that area. You know, this is something that we are also seeing in a lot of European countries. We have a shortage of skilled people to work in the area of social work and health care. You know, these areas are areas where a lot of women are working. You know, I'm talking about healthcare, I'm talking about social services, etc. We have a majority of women working in those areas, and this is because the working conditions are so harsh. You remember that there were very difficult times during the pandemic, and of course this was very stressful and very intense for all healthcare professionals, and I think that we have to ensure that our social protection is efficient and that it ensures the rights of workers and monitors the working conditions of these workers. So what I want to say is that our social protection systems are exposed to challenges, to constant changes. The labor market is evolving. Population aging is going to increase even more, generating new needs and generating also the need to innovate in terms of how we take care of our elderly population. I know that in such or such member states we have problems in terms of the quality of care. So I think that this is a very sensitive topic. We also have to look at the evolution of technologies, think about the changes in our healthcare systems, think about new technologies and how they can help in that area. So this is a major challenge for social protection systems. We need to carry out reforms. We need to adapt to the new situation. We need to strengthen our social protection because the needs in terms of social protection are certainly not going to decrease, but rather increase and change. So in order to better face these challenges, in order to be better prepared as member states, in order to help the member states to better prepare, the European Commission has set up a high-level group chaired by a former Minister and Commissioner for Social Affairs, Madame Diamantopoulou, And this group is going to look at the needs to see how we can meet those needs, how we can upgrade social protection in order to take into account these fundamental changes. The report from this high-level group will be published by the end of before the end of this year, and I hope that it will be the basis for a discussion between all the social protection players to ensure that Europe keeps the lead of social protection. Because it has not been a burden, I would say, but it's been an element for social cohesion in Europe, and it has been a key element, as we saw during the pandemic, for the preservation of our economies. So, the European social model, based on social protection, on an active protective state, of course, states which anticipate. I think this is what we want to aim for. This is what we want to continue to work on. And I think that this is really one of the strongest features of the European model. And I want to thank you for organizing this conference. And of course, I am waiting to see the outcome of your discussions and talks. Thank you.
So, Madam President, Madam Vice President, Commissioner, I'm very happy to speak to you, even though it's by video for this conference, and also at a time when we're halfway through this French presidency of the European Union. So I want to insist on this fact because we've made social rights equality one of the markers, one of the strong priorities of this presidency. With the European Commission and with many of you, we are carrying forward this fight, which will go on well beyond the French presidency. But I think that we can also look at the progress which has been made over the last weeks and months. So we are looking at a directive on minimum wages in Europe, and I'd like to applaud the work of many of the stakeholders, the European Parliament, the Commission and others. So we hope that this will be completed soon. This will be a major progress for social rights in Europe. Social rights, the social Europe, this is a fight for equality between men and women within the economic world, and two pieces of legislation have recently been produced. Transparency in terms of wages. This was produced a couple of months ago by the European Commission, and this is due to be completed. And also another text which has been blocked for many years, almost 10 years, on representation of women on boards. So this will be major progress to have this parity in boards of all European companies. So we see this combat needs to be extended. So sometimes this seemed impossible a couple of years ago. So, for example, the imported workers. But anyway, this text, we have made it possible by believing in it and by working together, by also believe that in times of crisis, economic and social crisis, such as the COVID crisis, we believe in strengthening the European model based on social rights. This is our strength, this is our commitment, and also our values. So thank you for this fight. We have much to do still with legislations which is still being discussed, workers on platforms, and also finalizing this ported workers. So there's a regulation which is currently ongoing. So we have proved that we're able to overcome many obstacles to make the social rule not just a slogan but a reality. Thank you to you. Thank you to all of you, and see you soon. Now we're going to connect on again. We're going to wait for Mr. Dragos Pistarou, who is Commissioner of Employment and Social Rights at the European Union. Over to you, Mr. Pistarou. Good morning, and first of all, allow me to thank the REIF for having invited me to this conference, and I'd also like to warmly greet the presidents and the vice president, Commissar Michael Schmidt and Minister Bohn. Unfortunately, I can't be with you, but as head of this committee on social rights, this is a theme which is dear to my heart. This is very important for future generations in the European Union, whether this is for the labour market, mobility of workers, access to education. All this is even more important in the current crisis which is facing Europe. Recent crises have once again drawn our attention to the need for social security. The pandemic of COVID-19 has seen people lose their loved ones and also lose their right to move around freely in order to seek work. But recently we have reacted rapidly in order to minimize the losses and guarantee the situation of our situations. We have reacted rapidly but also efficiently and to work, and we have put resilience at the very heart of our work. This is the heart of the Sure and React programs to strengthen the possibility of resilience, and this also involves many investments and to guarantee the right for work to all citizens. As Commissar Schmidt, more than 30% of all the recovery plans have social aspects at the very heart. And we also have to react to the Ukrainian crisis. There's a directive on temporary protection for refugees, which is called CARE. So we must be able to welcome those people who have come from a war zone and give them access to social rights, which are similar to, on the same footing as European citizens. This requires coordination because refugees, mayor and children, they will be welcomed in all the European states. And so this means that there has to be greater mobility. Sorry, we've lost the sound.
Most important rights of the European Union, with the mobility of workers keeping the EU labour market alive and business prospering, but in particular in countries receiving mobile and cross-border workers. Mobility must be nevertheless equitable for workers, and we need to ensure that their rights earned through their hard work are protected. The work on Regulation 883 and 997 on social security coordination is therefore critical after the failure of the provisional agreement last December. It is crucial then to continue working on a concrete solution towards a new consensus. I have been involved in the European Parliament team in these negotiations, and I can tell you that one clear way to reach an agreement on this file is to take better account of the digital transition. Not only digital solutions will diminish the burden on our public institution of social security, but it will also secure the trust that abuse is avoided and also deliver the citizen-centered approach that can guarantee that all the work is done in favor of the millions of European mobile and cross-border workers. Solidarity in terms of crisis, investing in the resilience of our institutions, digital empowerment, and raising the ambition to deliver on the European pillar of social rights, all these are required ingredients for better quality and better coordinated social security. Once again, I would like to thank REF and the speakers for their participations. I'm sure that this conference will contribute to the current debate on the issues related to social security and help us move forward a fair and equitable future for the next generation. On behalf of the Employment and Social Affairs Committee in the European Parliament, I can ensure our full commitment to the pursuit of this objective. Thank you very much.
So thank you to all of you. Thank you for being present at this REF conference. So I would ask the speakers of this first roundtable on how to meet the challenges of an aging population. So the director of DRES, research of studies and statistics from the Ministry of Health. And so just take a seat. There are 5 of you, so make sure you're seating comfortably. Director of the CNAV, Emmanuel Blanc, the director of CCMSA, Virginie Emagnon of the CNSA, and Nana Skofgard, who's a director for senior health in the group of municipalities in Denmark. So we're slightly late in terms of the timing. So I will ask you to be rather concise in terms of your answers to my questions so that we can try and respect the turn. And I believe, Mr. Blanc, that you also have a pressing engagement, so you need to leave us a bit more early. So let's get started straight away with Fabrice Langlard. There's an echo in the room, it seems. Well, never mind. So what about transversal response in terms of the major social risks from aging in France and in Europe? And what are the major common challenges for all the member states of the European Union? Sorry, no, we can't hear you. So good morning. I'm very, very happy to be with you this morning. I'm going to address this question in a couple of minutes. It's an absolutely huge question. There are a number of things which you already know, I'm sure, but I want to kind of give some meaning to tell you what's behind the aging of the population in Europe and in France in particular. So I'm just going to say a couple of words on the demographic trends in Europe and in France, and then I'm going to talk more generally about the impact of this aging population in France and in Europe, and three major social risks, retirement and pensions, the interdependency, and also protecting the health systems. Now, in terms of aging, this, of course, is a phenomenon which is very visible and very sensitive, a very sensitive issue. If we look at the part of the population which is over 60, so the seniors, and if we look at this, the working population, 24 to 45, and up until the mid-90s, so about 30 years ago, then there was about three senior people over 65 for 10 people of between 24 to 45 years old. And so these 3 to 10 ratio, this increased, but we had this situation until the mid-90s. But then in France, in the 90s, this was a crucial time because the people over 65. The baby boom started in about 1945, and this lasted for quite a while. So since the 90s, we've been involved in an important trend of aging population. So the over 65s has been increasing vis-a-vis the working population. So this is what we call the pappy boom. So this ratio is no longer 3 to 10, but more like 4 to 10, and it increases 1 point every single year. So in 2040, we will be at a ratio of 6 seniors to 10 people who are working. So you can see that the population is indeed aging. And of course, this aging trend due to the pappy boom and beyond 2040, we'll have this ratio at 6 to 10. This ratio will tend to increase as well. But there's a slight difference in terms of the people over 80. So the people born in 1945, beginning of the baby boom in France. So this crisis is very acute, and we'll see an acceleration of the people over 80 as well in the French population. And so today we're about 15% of people over 80 in the population. And so the clout of that vis-a-vis the working population is 15%. So that population will increase in the future. So we'll end up with 25%. So around 2060, 2070, the weight or the proportion of the over 80s, this will be the same as the people that are over 65. So that is what aging means. And compared to the European situation, so is France doing better than other countries or not? Basically, the phenomenon of the pappy boom is a bit more acute in France than elsewhere, but this is a general phenomenon in Europe. And so this aging population in France exists in the European Union, and this ratio for 4 to 10 that we're seeing in France, it's more or less the same in many European countries. There are a couple of countries where it's lower, Spain, for example. but if you look to the future, all countries are aging. And it will be even more accentuated in a number of southern countries like Spain and Italy, Greece as well. And they will get to this ratio of 6 to 10. And they will have a ratio of more like 7 to 10. So this is a very pressing situation. So what about the impact on dependency and health costs? In France, the aging population, which is already started, as I've said, and that will accelerate in the future, continue for about another 20 years. This will have an impact on our pension systems. But France, for about 30 years now, France has started taking a lot of reforms in terms of its pension system. And when we try to make a model of the impact of this, which will... And looking towards the future, if we take into account the long-term effects, which have already been, felt the impact of the reform, well, in France, this trend will diminish. So we think that in terms of the GDP, the pension spending will go down slightly, of about 1 to 2 points around 2050, 2070, if in terms of the reforms that have already been taken. So how do we explain this then? It might seem a bit paradoxical. Well, it's important to state this because pensions is something which are key. Of course, yes, it's something which is absolutely key, also in terms of the French presidential election campaign. So given the reforms that have already been introduced, and what's in the pipeline is a drop in terms of quality of life for the retired population vis-à-vis the working population. But the average quality of life at the moment is more or less 100%. So France is doing better than other countries in this respect. In most of the European countries, the level quality of life in terms of compared to the working population is about 80 to 85%. So we have, in terms of the reforms that have been introduced, have been voted, we've seen a drop, a slight drop in terms of quality of life vis-à-vis the working population for retired people, but this situation is similar in other countries. If we look at the spending for pension and in general terms, depending on whether the countries have already implemented reforms, and which will have an effect in the future. So, well, we'll have to see how these pan out. So I'm going to go even faster on the other subjects now. In terms of dependency, given the weight of elderly people over 80, so we'll be facing a shock in the future. So this is starting now, and it will accentuate over the next 30, 40 years, more generally in Europe. So in all countries in Europe, this will mean that spending will increase. And so there's no doubt about that. So it really is a major shock that we'll be facing in France. To give you an idea of the magnitude, so we're talking about 2 GDP points at the moment, but in about 30 years, this will increase by about 50%. And then there'll be an impact on health spending. Things are a bit more complicated there, because if you look the spending based on age, well, there'll be a structural impact. Health spending should increase, but in the future. But what we've seen is that the increase in kind of health spending due to age, this is concentrated just a few years before the end of life. So this kind of mechanical structural effect could be stopped because as we're living longer, the health spending at a certain age will go down slightly because and then there's a third effect so there are there's lots of technical progress as well. So if you bring together these different elements, that means that health spending will go up in France like in other countries of Europe. Thank you very much. Thank you for this presentation, this very general presentation of the aging in Europe and particularly in France. Now we're going to go and see what's happening in Denmark now. So, Dana Skofgard, what are the major challenges for you that your country is facing today?
Yes. Alors peut-être pouvez-vous parler un petit peu plus fort, je ne sais pas pour les traductrices, s'il y aura une traduction simultanée.
Okay. So I would just give you a very brief introduction to the Danish healthcare system, or the Danish society. So Denmark, we have 5.8 million people, so it's a small country. Our welfare model is based on free and equal access. It's taxpayer financed. It's universal healthcare, and we have a relatively decentralized model for providing health. It's provided by our local municipalities. We have a total of 100 local municipalities in Denmark, so it's approximately 50,000 inhabitants per municipality. They provide schooling, they provide healthcare, elderly care, etc. So it's just when you think what is when I'm talking, this is the basis of our model, universal healthcare. In 2007, we made a reform that we used to have more local municipalities. Now we have 100, and we had the idea that we wanted to provide healthcare and elderly care as close to citizens' home as possible. So that's the basis of our model. And I might also add that the retirement age in Denmark is 70. So we'd also made reforms on pensions. But so there are some differences to our model, basic model. But when it comes to our challenges, they are exactly as you described. We're going to get more people, that are more than 60% more, will be more than 80 years going forth to 2030. And the problem is not, of course, that people are getting older. That's not a problem in itself. The problem is that if they get diseases, if they need more attention from doctors, if they need more attention from caregivers. So when we look into our economy, we'd say that a person of 68 is twice as costly as a person so a person of 85 is twice as costly as a person of 75, and a person of 95 is twice as costly again. So the cost is just doubling. So this will crumble our economy, and it will crumble our the use of resources within our healthcare system. So this is a major task from a political and a democratic perspective. The problem of demography is like at the top of the agenda of politics in Denmark. I think that's important to state. So what do we do about it? At the individual level, we've for a long time been working with the idea that elderly people should be able to stay as long as possible in their own homes. So we don't use nursing homes to a very big degree. We do everything we can to keep people in their own houses. We work with prevention and early detection of diseases, and we work with rehabilitation. And the idea would be that instead of having healthcare workers help, you need a cup of coffee, you're an elderly person. Instead of me helping you to have the coffee, I would work very concentrated to help you to make your own coffee. So that's the basic model. We do rehabilitation. We don't do care for our elderly people. We try really to do care with them. That's what we do at the individual level with our elderly people. Then I think it's very important to state also that we work at the structural level with our hospitals. We cannot solve our demographic problem in the elderly care sector alone. We have to work with our hospitals and our healthcare system. Elsewise, our hospitals will be flooded with elderly people. So it's very important that hospitals work focused with our elderly care sector so that healthcare can be provided in patients' homes. We don't want patients to go to the hospital unless it's absolutely needed. So hospitals should be more extrovert. Patients should not just be patients entering at the hospitals. Patients should be patients also at a distance. That's a very important structural point, I think. Third, work with competences. if you're a healthcare worker, you should have a proper salary, you should have proper working conditions, you should have proper training and the facilities to give the care you want to give. Cliffhanger.
Oh, it's okay.
And fourthly, this is my final point, you should of course work with digitalization. You should work with new technologies both to make the citizens as self-reliant as possible. You can stay in your own home. You don't necessarily need to go to a nursing home. You can have a contact with your family and your healthcare worker on a video screen, just as we're doing now. We use the screens. We can use that in our elderly care as well. We can use technology to cooperate between healthcare workers at home and in hospitals. And we can, of course, use data to provide a more as targeted healthcare as possible. What does good look like? We have to use data and digital solutions to provide a better and more targeted healthcare. I think that's very important, to make the most of our resources. Those would be the so that it's like 4 venues to solve our demographic puzzle that we've been working within Denmark for the last, 15 years. So work with the individual and work with the population. Work with find ways to provide healthcare that is based in the needs of the individual, one point, and work with population-based strategies, coherent, holistic healthcare, so that we can make the most of our resources. I think that is the key if we want a system that is not going to cause inequality in our healthcare system and that will keep us with a sustainable healthcare system and elderly care system. And that's key if we want to provide for our democracies in years to come. So I think that would be my statement.
Merci Nadine.
Thank you very much. Thank you for presenting this very holistic approach for Denmark, caring for the elderly, the seniors. Now I'm going to hand over to Renaud Binard. What about the main challenges for aging populations, for pensions in the future? Thank you very much. So now many things have been said already, and from the point of view, a pragmatic point of view, in terms of the managers of the system, and apart from the figures for population, every year we have a large number of people coming into retirement, 700,000 people. So this really is a change of scale which goes very quickly. So you've got the immediate time, you have to support these people. So the Papi boom really is just around the corner with this massive increase of people over 65 and 80 in the future. And due to that situation, so there are many challenges. The first is that we will have to support better and more, support the elderly and the seniors, and also we also will have to give up on early care, because if we concentrate all our efforts on the 65s and the 80s, in 20 years we'll have people that won't have been supported in this the healthcare system. So we really have to use these 2 levers, and of course this represents a major challenge. Now, in order to meet that challenge, and I share what Madame Scopa said, and now in terms, there's a major lever here, which is early detection. And I think with the data system that we have, I think we are able to have the means, which are not very invasive, for doing early detection. Okay, well, perhaps we'll go back to that in a moment, if you don't mind, because you kind of given us a picture of the general situation. So we want to see what you do in terms of pensions.
Monsieur.
Thank you. Mr. Blanc, what is the vision of LSA on the challenges of aging? Can you tell us if you agree with everything that's been said so far at MSA? Yes, of course. The first challenge that we're facing is based on the transition of our economic system as a whole. Let me explain this. In 1936, we had 50% of the population that worked in farming business, and then after the war, it was about 40%. And when you look at people who own a farm, we had 2 million at the beginning of the 50s, and now we have 500,000 farmers as such. So this situation is very sensitive in terms of the aging of these people and also the farm workers, because we have so much fewer of them. And the fewer we have, the more each of them has to contribute to the social security system of MSA. Because it's fundamental, of course, for this system to be self-sufficient. And these people also have the burden of ensuring food supply for the country. So I think that this is the first challenge, really, of aging in terms of farmers' population. We have 1 farmer out of 10 who is under 40 in our country. 1 out of 10 who's under 40. And in the next 10 years to come, 50% of these people will retire. So the first challenge of aging is how to renew these populations in order to fuel our farm production systems, which is there to ensure food safety for the whole country. So this is a key challenge for us. And it means that we have to look at the renewal of generations in the farming world, because you cannot have farming without farmers, you cannot have farm owners if you don't have farm workers, and we have to ensure that the farming and rural world is represented in such a way that the generations can be renewed at the service of this strategic ambition, which is to ensure food sovereignty. You know, we say that the farming sector is the primary sector. Well, actually, it's the first sector, because it's there to satisfy the basic needs of the population. And I think that one of the challenges of aging in the context that we've seen of all these crises is that of the renewal of populations and generations. So we have to work very pragmatically on representation of farming jobs, because it's not only about land availability, it's not only about the financial and economic aspect and the transmission of farms from one generation to another. It's also about the morale, the mental health of these populations, who are today weakened, impacted by attacks that are made against them in terms of their farming practices. So that in the current transition context, we need to defend the moral interests of the profession. And our social protection system, which is specific for farmers, should contribute to that. And also, the other problem with the aging of rural populations is, you know, that rural population is older than the rest of the population. And in rural areas, it's always more difficult to have access to services. Yes, we talk about medical deserts, yes, and places where there is no public service, etc. So all this has led us to come up with much more ambitious proximity policies in rural areas than in urban areas, because it's really key for these people, especially when they become more fragile because they're becoming older. We want to be present with these populations rather than asking them to drive 30 or 40 kilometers to have access to the basic services that they need. This is at the heart of the policy of MSA. MSA being social protection system for farmers. And we have a holistic approach, as you said, of social protection of the farming and rural world, the heart of our policies at MSA. Thank you. Over to you, Virginie Magnon. In 2020, France has decided to create a so-called autonomy branch. What are the specificities of this branch of the social security? We've talked about holistic vision, especially this is what Nana Skovgaard told us about. What is France's point of view on that? Thank you. The autonomy branch of the CNSA, that's the National Security for Autonomy, is the youngest branch of social security that was created recently to face the challenges of the loss in autonomy of older people. Why did we create it? Well, because we want to strengthen national solidarity and to strengthen our capacity to meet the challenge of aging. Fabrice Langla gave you very enlightening figures regarding the demographic transition. I'd like to say that in 2030, that is tomorrow, people over 60 will be more numerous than people under 20. So what do we do? How can we face this challenge? It's a demographic challenge. It's also an economic challenge because, as Fabrice said also, and as you said, madam, aging means that these people will be supported in their autonomy, not people who are in their 60s, but people who reach the age of 75 or 85. Of course, this has a cost attached to it. And in France, we decided that we needed more national solidarity. That was the option that was taken in order to face the costs associated to old age. So creating this branch of the social security came with, of course, some financial means. In particular, we're looking at universal access. We're looking at funding provided by taxes paid by taxpayers in order to fulfill this solidarity obligation. So basically what it's going to mean is that the CSG is going to increase. CSG being a special tax which is dedicated to the social security, and this is going to increase between now and 2024. We want also the system to be fair. And because the autonomy support system was based on national solidarity from the government, from social security, and it is based on, well, we have local disparities. You know, the share of people benefiting from APA, the special assistance for autonomy, that's for people to stay at home, can be double in one department compared to the next. So we also have the handicap subsidy, which varies also from one department to the next. So that's probably because there are social and demographic differences. There are probably differences in the revenue of the people, but also there are probably differences in the way this situation of handicap or disability is recognized and accounted for. So we also have to work on taking better account of the people's needs in order to provide more equity, more equality with similar needs. This is, of course, very difficult to grasp because it's a highly individualized scheme, but we would like this to be fairer. And also the specificities of our branch, well, we are part of the big social security family, but we are rather special in the way we are governed, both nationally and locally, in particular, because the national CNSA governance is based of a council. My chairman is sitting here, the chairman of the council. In this council, we work with the social partners, of course, and we work with professional representatives as well. And you said that it was very important in this area. And you said that it's a challenge for all industries, for all businesses. And what we want to do is to design answers which are based on the people's choices. And so people are represented in the council also of that branch. And at a local level, our autonomy branch doesn't have local branches or local offices, unlike the other 3 branches. We have to use the network of our stakeholders, the autonomy departments of local authorities, department councils. We work with the local offices for people with disabilities. We work with the local social security offices. So our governance is rather decentralized. And one last word about the holistic approach that they have in Denmark. This is a source of inspiration for us, of course. And it's an approach that we want to implement. We want to make it possible for the people to age at home, to stay home with a subsidy system that is better adapted to the situation. We want to make it easier for the people to stay at home by offering them a secure and safe home, whether they adapt the place where they've been living all their lives, basically changing your shower or whatever. And also we are working on special homes for these people where they can be with other people in the same situation in order to reconcile the need for the people to stay at home and to also receive care and support and not be isolated, because they would be living with roommates, for example. So this is one of our objectives for 2022 to 2026. It's a plan which has just been approved by the Council. Thank you. Renaud Villard, back to you, because you actually started telling us about the priorities of the pension system. Maybe a word about this stay-home strategy. What does pension system do for that? Well, those 2 questions are connected, because what you call the virage domiciliaire, that is basically the stay-at-home system for older people. It's exactly what we want to do, and I don't think it's a turn, really, because in French we say virage, meaning that it's going to be a turn in our policy. But actually, the idea here is for people to stay at home. That's one of our ambitions for as long as possible. And today it means that we help people adapt their homes, 20,000 people per year, to better adapt their homes for them to stay longer at home. So maybe this is a turn that we're not taking very quickly, especially if you compare our France with the Nordic countries. Yes, maybe it's wise to go slowly, but, to say things straight, there are a lot of things that we can do in the face of aging, but after a while, we are going to optimize, we're going to screen the people better, we're going to spend the money better, but at some point we're going to have to spend more money, because you cannot just optimize your spending and face all of these challenges at once. It's a society choice. Yes, and Fabrice said that, pension expenditures are pretty much stabilized. I would like to be even and not to be in deficit, but it will probably be the case by 2050. But basically the pension spend is becoming stabilized. But of course, we are going to need more and more money. And more money will allow us to address a certain number of topics which we try to coordinate. Basically, to coordinate what we call the individual side and the collective side. Individual side is everything that has to do with the persons, to identify their needs very clearly, to say if maybe at some point they need to get their meals at home, if they need to, they need support to go and do their shopping, etc. And collective level is offering maybe workshops, about how to cook well, to have to eat properly, etc. But the idea is to get those 2 aspects to work together, and we would like to have a global approach based on the person's needs. I really want to insist on that, because the natural reflex of a person who is getting older will be to ask for individual care at home. But if you have a workshop where they learn how not to fall, this is going to also be very important in terms of the prevention of aging or the protection of aging, making sure that people age in the best possible conditions. We have a tool which was called OSCA, which was based on this holistic approach. You identify the needs of the person and you provide them with an individual need, an individual response, and also a response based on collectivity, on group work. And if we decide that coordination is the right thing to do, well, then this is how we have to do it. And then the last point, and as Madame Skovgaard said, the funding of innovation. Innovation is not going to solve everything. It's not going to solve the money issue, but it's a key. We usually talk about silver autonomy rather than silver economy, because it's really the economy of well-being, of the idea being to improve or to maintain these people in an autonomous situation. It's an ecosystem which is growing and which is finding its business model. And our social security model allows us to do social action, prevention, and it also allows us to very well know our pensioners, and this turns out to be very efficient to come up with new solutions. And also, what we have in common with others is that on a very regular basis we see these people, we know them. This is why no matter what age you retire, when you retire, it's a key milestone in your life. So we are setting up with a thing which is called Bienvenue à la retraite, welcome to your retirement. So the idea is to get these people informed about how to get their pension, of course, but also how to prevent the negative aspects of aging, because aging is something that you can't prevent, but you can make sure that it will be done in the best possible conditions. Okay, we've described the actions carried out by CNAV. You have different concerns maybe in your territories. What type of actions do you carry out in order to preserve the autonomy of people living in rural areas, knowing that, of course, they don't have so much access to some services? Do you also work on workshops, for example, to prevent falls, etc.? So, well, practically, we have a heavy responsibility because of our specificity, which is that we have a very general approach to the social protection of our beneficiaries. Actually, MSA would be like the GP of social security for farmers. You know, it's a general practitioner, so that's so we are close to our beneficiaries, close geographically. I mean, close geographically because we maintain our presence in rural territories, and this is a fundamental strategic objective that led us to be part of the Maison France Service program as partners, like all the social protection bodies, but also as an operator, meaning that we manage Maison France Service in the most remote areas because we consider that it's our duty. So as I said, proximity, closeness, holistic approach also of our beneficiaries. It's really the way we work, and it's why in each of the actions that each of our branches carries out, we want to really insist on what is the most specific need of the populations that we're taking care of. And plus, because of our specificity, MSA, you know, basically is at the origin of social protection, because we have this global view, because we have this proximity with our people, including geographical proximity, which we want to maintain, and also we have something which is fundamental, which is an election, because we have delegates, local delegates, who are elected every 5 years, 15,000 of them. They are volunteers, and they work with their people. They act as ambassadors and as watch people also in the territories to identify the needs and to report them back to us so that we can carry out very specific actions, especially when it comes to autonomy. And they define the specific needs of the people. We have small residencies, for example, small homes with 25, 30 people, who want to preserve their autonomy. We have 200 of those on the national territory. Also, thanks to these elected representatives, we have Présence Verte. It's a remote assistance program, which today the first operator of remote assistance in France, you know. And this is exactly why we are so deeply attached to the specificity that we have. It's a unique model in the organization of social protection, and also it's very useful because it enables us to be responsive in all areas. I did not mention families, but we have daycare centers, very small daycare centers. We call them micro-crèches in rural areas that will meet the specific needs of farmers or farm workers. Regulatory evolutions that we push for in the area of helping farmers to be replaced when they go on maternity leave or paternity leave, for example. So, you know, a farm owner can never stop working unless there's somebody to replace them. So we have this development of new rights which make it possible for these rural farm workers to benefit from all the provisions of social protection. Another example, in the area of health, of course, we work on special prevention actions. 2 examples, if you allow me. We also work for the occupational medicine of farm owners and farm workers, and in that respect, we develop specific prevention actions for farms, and thanks to this occupational medicine department, we support these people. We also work on health prevention, and also because we are the social security for these people, we have to play our role in helping them and supporting the local healthcare systems. And in the most remote territories, we create, for example, what we call CPTS, which is a coordinated body of the healthcare system aiming at fighting against medical deserts. We also try to make it possible to better meet the needs, the healthcare needs of populations in local rural areas. We have a lot of examples of such actions that work. And of course, we have pension activities. We have what we call ASEP, that's prevention system. And everything that we do is very useful because in a rural territory, we can bring together 100 people who don't have to be members of our system, but they can work on specific actions. You know, they can get together in the middle of the countryside to talk about breast cancer prevention, for example. We carry out such initiatives based on our local representatives and our local employees, and it is important for us to ensure that this gem that we have can continue to thrive, and we have to do everything to continue to work for the people in rural areas. Thank you very much for this very thorough presentation. Nana Sauvegarde, you said what you did in your countries in terms of support. What are your expectations regarding Europe? That means, what can Europe do to help you, Denmark and other European countries, when it comes to aging? What is it that you expect from Europe? Is it money? What do you expect?
First of all, I'm not here as a representative of the Danish position to the European Union,
Sans être représentante, yes. Quelles seraient justement des bonnes...
No, but of course you are from Denmark, so what do you think would be the right actions to carry out at the level of Europe to help and support states and governments?
First and foremost, that we have, that we do like we do today, that we have discussions and that we are able to see ourselves and our own system and our challenges in the mirror of the other. So that in having this discussion, I get ideas and I will be able to return to Denmark and say, well, this is what they do in France. Could we do something that resembles this? This is what we do in rural areas in France. What could this look like in a Danish context? So I would be less I'm less interested in getting common models and ways of doing things, and I'm more interested in having frank discussions and exchanges of ideas and figures, and that we look at this. This is a shared challenge, but we don't necessarily have to solve it in the same way. So I think from what do I need from Europe and from France? I need us to solve the problem of demography, and I need us to have discussions as to how we do it, and don't paint, nice pictures, but really say, this is difficult for us, how can we solve this? I think that would be a major, of major value from a Danish context, and I really think we should get through this together as a continent. Yeah.
Ok. Un petit mot, peut-être, mais court, s'il vous plaît.
Just one quick word. Yes, it's going to be very quick, I'm sorry. What we can expect from Europe is that kind of discussion too. It's very, very valuable, of course. And in a crisis like the one that we're going through right now, everybody understands that we need to go back to basics. And this is what is interesting, if you can say that a crisis is interesting, of course. But because the thing is that we have to go back to the roots of social protection and the usefulness of social protection. So I think that this discussion is extremely valuable. What we expect from Europe is that European funds could be mobilized in order to better value the local territories, in order to attract farmers and farm workers. You have a lot of populations who want to leave major cities and who want to come to rural areas. And of course, they're totally allowed to do that, but they need to be served. They have the need to live in a good atmosphere, on good grounds with the local people and with the farmers, etc. So I think that this is maybe something that Europe could do something about. Renaud Villard, do you agree with this point of view? Especially when it comes to access to European funds, or maybe you have different demands? No, I totally agree with what's been said, especially what's been said. And one of the key challenges, I think, that we expect from Europe would be to upgrade, to change gears, because we have a market with about 120 million elderly people, and this is going to keep on increasing. So we need to make better use of new technologies, and we need to adapt to the changes. I was brief, right? Oh yes, you were perfect. Now Virginie Magnon, CNSA is going to be involved in workshops with other European countries, Denmark and Sweden, for example, to think about a territory-based approach of these policies. Now, of course, we are having discussions right now, but why do you want to work on other things? How can we put all this together, even though, of course, you can't just copy something from abroad into a country? It's not expectations that I have regarding the European Union, but I want to thank them, because as the Commissioner said in his introduction, the European Commission supports the transformation of our branch with support from DG Reform. And it's very good to have their support, because we can work on our internal reorganization, because we are facing the challenge of transformation. It's a very demanding roadmap. We're going to mobilize great means, both human and financial. So the idea is to see how we can make the best possible use of that internally, and also to see how we are going to work better with other players. There are many of them, because we are looking at a holistic approach of the people's needs. So at this time, in the creation of our branch, we need to look at the way other countries, in particular Denmark, as you said, will organize themselves to combine national monitoring, national solidarity, with a very a local action. So it's going to be a benchmarking. It's not going to be just a discussion, but working groups actually. And this is something that is key if we want to be able to face the challenges.
De voir si on a des...
Now, before we see if there are any questions for you, Fabrice Longard, so you spoke initially, so perhaps you can draw some conclusions. What are you going to take away from all these different presentations? Well, what really strikes me is that this challenge linked to aging populations in Europe, and if you look at this in the long term, this is happening at a time when we're facing other challenges like climate change. And so we can see that the European model will once again will have to be assured historically. We have to go back to fundamentals. The European model is based on solidarity, and it means that there will be extra needs to face. We have to have a holistic approach and find solutions which are concrete and closest to the ground. We have to have the means to do this, but we also have to pay for those means and also deal with climate change. If we want to find these resources, we have to have a harmonious labor market and probably extend people's working life. And if we want to deal with all these different problems, we have to accept we have to accept that we can't increase everybody's quality of life, but we have to do it as harmoniously as possible and try and achieve well-being for as many as possible. So we need to, so the challenge is really about transforming European society. And I think that European society is well prepared for this because of its history, and this history which is based on solidarity. Thank you very much. Now I have a question which, for those of us who are following this remotely, I wanted to know if, for those people who are in the room, in the auditorium, if they have any questions. We have a question over here, and then we can take 3 or 4 questions, but we have to go quickly so that we can try and make up for lost time. So this gentleman over here had a question, so please keep it short. So, and please don't all respond to this, because otherwise we really won't be on time. But this is for the address the most. So to talk about CSG, so basically the condition in Europe is created added value. If we don't create added value, so there's a real issue in terms of the European economic model for creating wealth. So I think that's the first. And the second point is a concrete example. Well, in MSA, I'm the head of a central fund of the MSA. We have close relations with European countries, especially on social protection for farmers, where we work with the Austrians, the Germans, the Poles, the Finns, and we exchange experiences on what we do to respond to the lady from Denmark. So we regularly have relation-building operations to communicate around our various experiences so that each country can adapt to its own situation. So exchanges of good practices, and so we talk about population aging. The problem of rural population aging is identical in all the different European countries. So we share our experiences, and of course that's a very interesting initiative because everybody draws something from it, and we can then adapt our own situations. Okay, thank you. So I'm not sure whether that requires a response, but thank you for that anyway. You are in charge of... Sorry, there's no microphone. Anybody else who would like to ask a question to our speakers? So, well, we're going to take 3 or 4 questions. So go ahead, Sylvia Nyon. I'm from University of Rennes. So first of all, thank you for everything you've said this morning. This issue of aging of the working population, we've talked about caring for these people, but But this issue and aging of the working population is a key issue in the European Union. If we don't consider that aging is going to be a burden, you talked about creches, and, well, we have to think about extending people's working life as well, and perhaps extending working time. So if we want to keep our social security coverage, we have to work on that. If we have to have a global vision of things, I don't really know how we can work on this issue without looking at the labour policies in all European states and adapting these so that we can, so the populations can age. And we also have to think about social usefulness of people working longer. So, and I think that this, for the moment, this issue hasn't yet been covered, but it's a huge question. Yes, it's a huge issue. We're talking about work, as you pointed out. I don't know whether anybody wants to react to that, or should we just note it down for future debates? So, of course, I share what you've said. Well, we haven't discussed this yet because we haven't had time, basically, but aging. So when you age, of course, we have to think about the carers because they are also suffering from this situation, but. And of course, we need to mobilize public policy. So I share exactly what you said, but in terms of what was said, I share what you said. Okay, you have the microphone. Don't hesitate to introduce yourself. Yanis Nassisa, I'm from Brussels. I'm from the European Platform for Social Security. Well, there's several of our members here today. So I have a question. I'd like to talk about money here, and I'd like to know, in France, if you have already had discussions on funding this system in the future. And of course, this is a major issue also in Denmark. So I'd like to know how those discussions are going. Do you talk to each other about this? Do you talk to the government about this? And of course, you've talked about the role of the European Union. So in Brussels, we try to monitor all the different decisions that are taking place. But on this subject, which tends to be a national subject, however, but is there any room for cooperation, coordination at European level? Thank you. Okay, as time is passing, I'm going to take all the different questions on this side of the room, because otherwise we won't be able to stick to time. The lady over here, Claudia Schaar. Social Security for Austria. Just a couple of comments. So one of the challenges in Austria is how to increase or push back the retirement age, and also how can we keep people as long as in a job as long as possible. So this means health promotion, prevention, and all those kind of things. Also something which is interesting and which resembles what's going on in Denmark. We have a pilot project for pensions, and the issue is how can we support people who provide the care? How can we support them as best we can? How can we do this actively? How can they provide the care, but how can I maintain my mental health, my physical health as long as possible?
I'm going to switch into English because of the question to the Danish colleague. So I have two questions regarding one, the financing of this extraterrestrial care you mentioned, meaning that you have really caregivers from the hospitals going to the homes and support the people staying at home. So I suppose it's going to be also an increase in costs. So did you do an analysis how this is increasing, or if it is increasing, and how you're going to finance it? And also another question is, is everyone really participating in, or what do you do if people don't want this, doing it themselves? You know, if people don't want to learn how to adapt. I think there might be also part of the people who don't want to and who just want that someone else is doing it. So how do you deal with that? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alors, On va s'arrêter là pour les questions parce que
Okay, we're going to leave the questions there because otherwise we won't be able to stick to time. Nana Sovgadian, so you received a question, so we can see in terms of what the gentleman said, there were some questions concerning funding. And so there is a need for the stakeholders in different countries to speak to each other. So let's go very quickly, and then we'll take the question from those people who are following remotely. So Nana, please, very concise answer, please. So very short, please.
As fast as possible. On the first point, how do hospitals work with primary care? My point, and I think this is important, it is not that hospitals should be giving care in people's home, because that would be expensive. My proposal is that hospitals take on them to help primary care. So that if you're a specialist in the hospital, you do not only take care of the patients that enter your door at your hospital, you give advice and you cooperate with the primary care people, for instance, the general practitioner who is in the area. So hospitals should be working with primary care in order to prevent hospitalizations. So it's not, giving care at a distance from the hospital, it's more cooperation between hospital and primary care giving, exchange. That's the first point. Second, what if people don't want to, get help making their own coffee? That is a problem. So it's working with education and communication, and this takes skills. So it's returning to the point, we want caregivers to be educated, and we want the relational, the interpersonal skills to be at hand. This is not just being it's not just technical skills, it's about relations and being able to educate and communicate with the people you're going to give care. That's important. So it's education. It doesn't come by itself, you have to work with it. And on finances, I would just say, in Denmark, the discussion is, even if we had all the money in the world, we would not be able to give care. So we lack the hands. So we have to invest in the transformation of our healthcare and our elderly care system. I think that should be our main discussion.
j'ajoute que vous pourriez éventuellement.
Okay, and perhaps you could also discuss this over lunch if you like. So concerning funding now, very quickly. In France, 30% of the GDP goes to social security. And it's more than that in other countries. So it is a key issue. That's the first thing. But first of all, we have to think about the economic activity. This has to be enough to be able to fund all these social protection systems. And I think that we need to reflect more on that than we're doing currently. Thank you very much. You did keep to time. Thank you. Now the question that came from WhatsApp and those people who are following remotely. This is for you, Renaud Villard. So, keeping people in their homes. So, doesn't this mean that we have to think of the proches aidants? So think about those people losing autonomy. So, keeping people in their homes then. So, and this was raised by the Austrian colleague. I think, so this is a subject that we need to tackle. We have to better accompany the carers, so that the carers can go off on a holiday, etc. But also so that we have a true protection for them. So we have to train these people as well. So if you're helping somebody to get washed every morning, you don't know what to do or how to do that, then you might damage your back. So we have to have an approach on this, and of course this is all based on cooperation, on funding. Just sometimes you have to set limits. So this is a political limit, but basically the ratio between benefit and this target of 1% for prevention. I think that we can all reach that 1% for prevention, and this would so at the moment we're at 0.5. So thank you, Virginie Magnon. So then we're going to close this roundtable. So recognition and the role of carers within this system, this is absolutely key. It's CNSA. This is one of the places where early on we've seen this recognition of carers, and Renaud already mentioned this. There are three main levers to support the carers. First of all, be able to help them and provide assistance. That's the first expectation, and this would relieve the burden on these carers. But then going beyond just providing assistance to them, because of course carers can't replace professional people, but also giving them better access to social rights and entitlements, so this is for the people that the carers and also the people are being cared for. So we can use digital means, so helping these people have easier access, so that they don't have to deal with a real fighting just to receive their entitlements. Simplifying access to social rights for the carers and for the people being cared for. Thank you to all five of you. You can go back to your seats.
Alors, il est 11h, on a rattrapé.
So it's 11 o'clock. We've made up for some lost time. So we're going to start the next round table. So for the second round table then, for the morning, and this is on poverty, supporting families of job seekers, two levers for fighting poverty. Now, to discuss this, we've got five different speakers. Pascal Coton, Vice President of CSEC, Christophe Valenti, Director General of UNEDIC. So he is replacing Patricia Ferron, who couldn't be with us. So Christophe Valenti. So you can sit where you like, and Michel Villard, Vice President of the Superior Council for Childhood Affairs and Aging. Be careful not to fall. And then Martina Stepankova, Director of Family Policies and Rights for Children, Minister of Labour from the Czech Republic. Rita Skribiskiane, Vice President for Social Protection. So I'm sorry if I got your names wrong. So we're going to start with you, Michel Villac. As I said before, Vice President of the Higher Council for Child Affairs and Aging, that makes recommendations on objectives for family policies. Now, for those of you who are listening to us and who don't really know the role of this particular council. Now, if we look at the different opinions that have been delivered by this council, can you tell us about poverty in France? So we have a rotating presidency, which I'm at the head of at the moment. So we'll take advantage of your presence at the moment. So in terms of the council, the upper council, we work on poverty for families and children. So what can I say? Basically, so we're talking about an average rate of about 14% for the whole population. So 14% of the population in France is living below the poverty line. And one of our particular features is that this rate is much higher for children. We're talking about 20%. So 1 child in 5 is living in poverty. So what configuration are we talking about? So you found basically the two situations. These single-parent families, more than 40% of children who are in a single-parent family are living in poverty, and more than 60% if we're dealing with families with at least 3 children. And secondly, in terms of couples that with large families, we have levels of over 40% for those families that have at least 4 children. So this is a subject then. So major poverty for certain categories of children. So we're talking about 2.8 million children, basically. Now, in terms of these different family situations, what can we say then? we can see that one of the main issues is the issue of jobs and employment. For single-parent families, a third of parents, single mothers, don't have a job. And what is particularly worrying is that most of these don't really sign on for unemployment benefits, so they're very far removed from the job sector. Okay, well, I suggest that we look at this a bit later on. So thank you for this first snapshot of the situation. Sorry, no microphone. Okay. So I just wanted to say that the second thing is that in terms of couples, so you have the father who is working in a low-skilled job, a mother isn't working. So this is where you have the highest levels of poverty. Last element that I wanted to point out, the fact that there's a part of the family which is off the radar. So these are families which are very precarious, living in very precarious situations. And so they're not included in the statistics, so they're off the radar screen. So, and especially when it comes to schooling for children, there are no figures for those people. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll go back to that when we talk about employment. Pascal Coton. So, public service for early childhood. This was an opinion that was rendered, and this was voted at to the tune of 80% in March by the General Assembly. So what are the main recommendations to fight against poverty of families, which is quite extensive in France? Thank you very much. Let me change the subject. So this is the service for early childhood, but we really wanted to talk about taking care of young people. The public services must be as close as possible to these children. We try and do as much as possible for these young children. So we started with a situation which was not very positive. So let me give you a few figures on these children who are not being cared for. 14.6 million. So this is how much we spend on early childhood. So this is a considerable financial effort. And despite this, 14.6 billion, we have many children who are still not cared for. 48% of families don't use any of these systems. The parents stop working, and so they just try to get by, basically. 30,000 extra places which were due to be created between 2018 and 2022, but only 40% have been opened. 9%, this is the number of poorest families who have access to formal care for the children. And so this is compared to 60% of the richest families in France. So this is a situation which is very dramatic. So the worse the situation, or in terms of poverty of these families, the less they use the childcare systems. Situations are very different. So the fewer you have of resources, then the more you have to pay for these services. So the work that we have carried out, we wanted to recommend public service for young children, so that we can take these children in and care for them in right situations, respect their health, and this, whatever their geographic, professional situation, and resources of the family. The children shouldn't pay for the financial situation of their parents. And so we tried to get as many children as possible into this public service, so that this could solve the problem for many. So, of course, these are children also who could be disabled. When we talk about parents, these may be parents who don't have a job because they choose not to have a job, and so we take these children in a couple of days per week to allow the children to be with other children and to kind of construct their whole life, build their identity. Thank you. Christian Valenti, the family policy that we've just seen, this is one of the components of a global policy for fighting poverty. So how can unemployment benefit? We don't perhaps think of this immediately. How is that one of these components? And you're right. I want to go over briefly what unemployment benefit is. So we're talking about 40 billion euros per year, and this is a so the government doesn't intervene here. So it's so it's a principle of insurance. It's based on solidarity, and also it's compulsory. So it's not exactly a solidarity-based system as some other protection systems may be, but it's really focused on the individual. And this is compulsory for the employer to pay. So perhaps I'm going to shock you here, but unemployment benefit, the objective isn't to fight against poverty. That's not its prime objective. So it's not the prime objective. No, it's not the prime objective. So the first objective is to secure a person's work in life. It's an insurance system, so it's against unemployment. But it's not the objective, but it is the result. So the specific thing about this system is that it's a distribution-based system, and it contributes directly to a number of sustainable objectives of the UN fighting poverty. And we talk about a distribution system because all employees contribute to this system, and those people that benefit from this insurance, who have accidents, for example, basically, those are people who are carrying out low-skilled jobs. They're not very constant jobs, and so they're people who are living close to the poverty line, and these are the first people to benefit from this unemployment scheme. So so you've got so other people who are working in less or in more skilled jobs, they don't tend to use this system as much. They're not unemployed as much. So it's not the prime objective fighting poverty for this system. The second thing is it's a contribution-based system, and we help to fight inequality, poverty, and also having access to a decent job, because this allows employed people to make professional transitions and also develop their skills and competences. Thank you for that first intervention. I'm going to hand over to Rita Srebiskien. So as Vice President of the Committee for Social Protection, which has an advisory role for ministers in the Council for Jobs and Social Affairs, what's your vision in terms of fighting poverty, which is carried out at European level, and what are the what are the best ways of eradicating poverty?
Yeah, thank you. I will speak in English. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, first of all, I present here European Social Protection Committee, which is advisory board to the Council of Europe, and we are, within our mandate, we would deal with social protection and social inclusion issues. And while implementation, of course, of social policy is within the remedy of member states, on EU level, we exchange experience, we perform mutual learning, and so on. So once you asked about the vision, so I will briefly we'll go through the recent priorities and forthcoming priorities. Okay. So you know that 20 principles of European social rights pillar are our social rule book, and 1 year ago, member states agreed to set headline targets, 3 headline targets, which one of them are reduce social exclusion and poverty. And now we agreed, member states produce national plans and will be monitored. We strive to reduce 15 million people from the poverty, to take them from the poverty, and within these 15 millions, 5 millions should be children. And of course, when we talk about child poverty and child well-being, we assign special attention to child guarantee. But of course, it's not important just for child. It's especially important for child in disadvantaged areas and groups. Of course, my committee, we emphasize the role of family as a prerequisite for developing and growing, decent growing of the child. Second, I would like to mention recommendation on access to social protection. And it was adopted a few years ago, and now last year we drafted national plans how to increase social protection coverage for people who work in non-standard forms of work, you know, due to changes in labor market. A lot of people, this number is growing up, of people, of non-standard workers. So we have national plans which illustrate increasing unemployment insurance coverage, adequacy and transparency on the system. And of course, it's very important not just to provide adequate income support, but also to provide access to social services and to all services. What is not to forget, yes, third set, and there will be more one point, on minimum income schemes. Of course, minimum income recommendation is underway, and we work with the European Commission on elaboration of studies and analysis of this issue, of this challenge. And we suppose that minimum income schemes vary very significantly regarding their adequacy, their accessibility, and accessing services. So we hope that this recommendation will help member states to develop their own system. And in this context, I would like to mention that just 1 week ago, during the French presidency, it was excellent event discussion on non-take-up of benefits, member states exchange views. So fourth and maybe the last point is health and long-term care. Of course, they suffered very huge challenges, especially due to pandemic. And therefore, you know that care strategy initiative will come. It will cover long-term care and also on children, early access to health, to education and care. And of course, maybe we will elaborate a little bit later issue on Barcelona targets. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Merci Rita.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rita. Over to you, Martina Stepankova-Stibrova. You are from the Czech Republic, where the poverty rate is one of the lowest in Europe. So what measures have you implemented for families, in particular single-parent families and numerous families, as Michel Villac mentioned in his introduction? So what did you do for the families, and how did you implement the European Guarantee for Childhood, which aims at preventing social exclusion of children in need?
Good morning. I'm going to answer in English. I'm sorry. Well, in the Czech Republic, it's true that we have very low income poverty rate. It's approximately 9-10%, so 900,000 people. Well, I believe that it's also the situation also because of some historical development in the Czech Republic. We have quite low income inequalities and also low medium income. And we have also high efficiency of social transfers. So, for example, transfer for children and families with children. But it's also true that if we look on a specific groups, like with single-parent families, families with 3 and more children, the situation is worse. So we believe that we have to focus on services, public services in general, social services, services for children, and also equal access to education, because it's a really basic and necessity. We also focus on benefits for children's families, and in the last year we increased some benefits like children's benefits. We also introduced benefits for carers who care about, for example, parents, elderly parents, etc. We also prepare new benefits for parents who do not have alimony for suppose, so we offer them something like an advanced alimony or something like this to help in their situation. And we also focus on labor market. So we believe that enable parents, carers, and other people participate on the labor market is also crucial for their situation. So, for example, last year, we introduced or support something like a job sharing job. It's a form of a flexible arrangement. Yeah, that they could share, for example, who could share with somebody else the one place. And we support it with some taxes, etc. Yeah, so like this maybe in a general. And if we look on a connection with the action plan implementing the children's guarantee, we mainly focus on education, the equal access, and we also try to support something like a social work in a school, and coordinate and activate different actors on a local level, from social services, social worker, some NGOs, school, families, and to prevent any disadvantage and risk of poverty, etc. So so we believe in a mix that could help to people. And right now we also focus on vocational training or requalification to help people with low skill or another problems, or who spend longer time outside of the labor market from different reasons, to help them find adequate job with adequate income. And maybe, sorry, on the last one, we also focus in last year, recently, we also increased minimum wage in the Czech Republic rapidly, and we also invest a lot into kindergartens and children's group, what is something like a creche from 6 months to 6 years. And we have, from 2018, we have also right for place in the kindergartens from 3 years. So, like this. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. On voit bien effectivement que c'est
Thank you very much. We see that it's a policy that works on employment, on daycare for children, and this is also something that contributes to reducing poverty rate in your country. Pascal Coton, in your opinion, you emphasized parents who have non-standard jobs, poorly paid jobs, or who are job seekers, or who have handicapped child or children. So it's because you're a public service that is very useful for employment and jobs. And how do you position yourself? Yes, well, you know, I gave you numbers, but we need to have a real public service of support to families. You know, the families say to us it's very difficult to obtain information. We don't know where we can find a daycare center that will take our child, etc. So we were thinking that it would be good to have a point of contact for these persons to turn to. When we talked about daycare public service, you know, the idea was that we wanted every child to have a place. Whether or not you have a job, your child has the right to go and have fun with kids his or her own age in a place that can be a daycare center, a creche, or an assistant maternelle. So that would be a nanny that has several children at her home. But this cannot work if we don't have the means to be properly organized. Because maybe if we create 50 more daycare centers throughout the country, Well, we have the means, that's done, but unfortunately we don't have the staff to work in those daycare centers because it's jobs which are very poorly paid, because it's jobs which are poorly considered. And so you have to recruit these professionals, you have to glorify these people, you have to give a meaning to their jobs. You know, for a nanny at home or for somebody who works in a daycare center, they need to work in better conditions. And also, when you are in a poverty situation, very often you pretty much stick to yourself. You don't go out towards other people. And so we have to reach out to these families, to these people who don't dare to come as if we were going to ask them to be accountable. No, we have to reach out to them to bring them back into society in order to find a job, a true job. It's like children with disabilities, for example. They have the right to be in touch with other children. They have the right to go to a daycare center or to kindergarten. But as I said, we need to organize training for professionals in that area. We need to make sure that these children will be taken care of and that the parents will be supported so that the parents can feel at peace, you know. As a union activist, I can tell you that when parents are working in the company and they don't know how their children are taken care of in the daycare center, well, that's a problem. I think they would have peace of mind if they could rely on the daycare center, and this would have a positive impact on their own job. And also, in this opinion, we really wanted to stress the well-being of the children. Some children feel comfortable being around other children. Other children will prefer to be on their own, you know, with a nanny, etc. So, of course, once we gave our opinion, the answer was not, okay, next Monday we are going to open centers and everybody will be safe. We just wanted to give milestones and indications, and we hope that the government will take that on board, because it was actually commissioned by the government, this opinion. And so we hope that in the next years to come, every child will find his or her place in a daycare center that suits their parents. Now, Michel Villac, employment is also at the heart of the work done by the Conseil de la Famille et de l'Enfance. So how can you do for people who are in great social distress to have access to a job? Because this is really one of the challenges. We've seen that it is the case also in the Czech Republic, and it's how they could actually decrease the poverty rate. How can you break the circle of poverty? I would like to make a comment before that, if you don't mind. The first comment is that our social protection system plays an important role in reducing poverty on the whole population. As I said, we have 14% of the population who lives below the poverty rate, and it would have been 22% before this new redistribution system. So our social system plays a great role in terms of redistribution. It plays an even greater role for families, because for single-parent families, for example, with at least 2 children, you go from 61% to 40%. So it's a major decrease. Well, we still have 40% poor people, but it's less than 60% that we had before. Same for couples with 3 children or more, for whom the decrease is 20% also. So it's on top of what this lady was saying, we have a policy that plays a role, but we don't go all the way in terms of results. Secondly, comparing poverty rates. Poverty rates look at a given population in a given country, and they compare the situation of the poorest with the median situation. When you do comparisons in Europe and some benchmarking, the difficulty is that the average living standard is not the same in all countries. For example, if we look at the Czech Republic, the poverty rate is about 8,400 euros. It would be 12,300 in France. It is. So if you think in terms of absolute poverty, with a poverty level at 8,400, of course in France we would be below 5% if we were to take the same number, right? So we have to be very careful when we make a comparison. Now, back to your question. The first thing is the fact that most people who are in poverty, mostly women, are very, very remote from the labor market. So this is something that we need to do something about. Also, as Madame Coton said, a lot of these people have children, young children, and when you're a single mom and you have a child who's 6 or 7 years old, you cannot just leave him or her on his own. So we need to have daycare solutions for children. And it means that we have to identify the problem, and this is something that people in Pôle emploi usually do, but it also means that the person has to be organized in order to do the job, and so the people from Pôle emploi, the employment agency, have to work on that with the people, and they have to offer daycare for the children, also for the person to be able to go to work. And then something else about the creche or daycare centers, it means that we will have to go for temporary daycare, because the first thing that the people need to do is to go to an employment at the job agency or to attend a 2-week or 3-week training, for example. They need to have an emergency solution in that case for the child. Otherwise, they can't just attend the training if they have nobody to take care of the child. So what we do is that we push for full-time daycare, and you don't have the possibility to have temporary daycare. You know, we do have daycare centers for people who are in vocational training, who are trying to answer this question, but it's not so much the case for the moment. Secondly, our offer is very unequally distributed. Basically, daycare centers, you have them mostly in well-off areas. And so in the most working class, popular areas, you have that problem. You don't have daycare centers. And this is why it's a part of one of the things that we should need to work on in France. Thank you very much, Michel Villac. Christophe Valenti, we've seen that there is a correlation between the family configuration and the poverty. It's especially true that single-parent families are the poorest. And there is also a link between the poverty and the fact that you are remote from the job market, that you've been away from the job market, as Mr. Villac said. And so how does the unemployment insurance system secure the career path in order to prevent people from falling into poverty? Oh, well, that is exactly the purpose of our unemployment insurance scheme. It was said that what takes you out of poverty is work, basically. It's a salary. So unemployment insurance in that case plays the central role. Unemployment insurance today means that we have to give money to 2.5 million people every year. It's not the same because there's a rotation. People get insurance benefits, unemployment benefits, and then they get back to work, and then they get back to getting benefits. Well, you know, we call it a safety net or social protection, whatever. So a lot of people benefit from that. And we are really at the heart of unemployment insurance. It was designed in 1958 by the social partners, and since then it was always managed by social partners. But it is very specific because it's a progressive type of benefit. The lower your salary, the higher the contribution from unemployment insurance. So it goes directly out to the most fragile population, people who don't have a steady job, people who don't have a skilled job. And it also is targeting mostly people with low income, because we give on average 960 euros a month. 2.5 million, as I said. It's about half employment seekers. Half of the employment seekers get a benefit from the unemployment insurance scheme. Well, of course, it depends if you're working part-time, full-time, etc., but I could give you just any numbers you'd like to hear. So for those who work, it's 700 euros and some for those who work. So if you work, plus you get unemployment benefits, you will have a basic wage of about 1,400 euros if you add up everything that you can get, your wages plus unemployment benefit. So this is really something to extract you out of poverty. We have other regimes which are called solidarity. That is, if you take the 20% people with the lowest income, 1/3 of their income actually comes from an employment benefit. So we have a very high level of support, and it's much higher than the other types of benefits that these people can get. So we see that the role of fighting against poverty is part of our job, part of what we do. But of course, we're looking at salaried work here. We're looking at people who have a job. We're not looking at general solidarity. And also, we are the first in terms of contributing to fighting against poverty, because we do distribute a lot of money, but not to everybody, mostly to people who have a job, even though an unsteady or non-standard one. Pascal Coton, do you think we should create, well, if we refer to your opinion, which was voted 2 days ago, I think, should we create a daycare service that would be a basic right, just like we have the right to have a home right now? Before I answer the question, I'd like to say that we have a daycare type of mode which we did not mention, which is parental leave. So we also wanted to speak with parents or future parents who say we would like to spend more time with our kids when they're infants. And so we based our work on Boris Cyrulnik's research, and we thought that it was better to organize things to make sure that the parents could spend more time with the kid until he gets to the age of 1. But of course, financially speaking, it's very often the woman who will take the parental leave because she's the one who earns the lowest salary. So she will receive 800 euros for the parental leave. So you see that this is discrimination between men and women again. So we would like the amount to be 75% of the last salary, so that we would have less discrimination between men and women. Now, about this inalienable right, this is exactly what happened with housing. In our opinion, we did not analyze this in detail as the Prime Minister asked us to do. But it's like for housing, when you want to make something mandatory, well, it means that somebody has to make it available. This public service is not organized, so it cannot be made mandatory. But rather than leaving the government with a blank page, we said that in this opinion, we made a certain number of recommendations that would be as clear and specific as possible, as to make sure that every parent would have a solution in their daycare solution. You know, somebody who has non-standard schedule, for example. It's very complicated when you work night shifts or early morning. You know, it's very often women who do that. That's second-line workers, as we call them. Mostly women. All these people need to have all the possibilities to get their children taken care of. But a mandatory right is not something that we could give an opinion on for the moment, because we don't have the right organization. And we wanted this opinion to be very serious. We didn't want to make wishful thinking, and we didn't want to make to tell things to the parents that wouldn't be feasible. Thank you, Pascal. Rita, the European Union has set up a certain number of initiatives aiming at fighting against poverty, in particular of women and children. Now, we're not going to list them all because there are so many, but could you go back to the revision of the Barcelona objectives, which aim at developing daycare centers for young children with the view of increasing the involvement of women into the labor market, and also to promote a better balance between family life and professional life? Can you tell us a few words about the revision of the Barcelona objectives?
Yes, thank you. For sure, that supporting families and especially providing possibilities to get affordable, quality and accessible care services, and also together with incentives to work, to tax and benefit incentives are very important for parents to work, and especially for women. And that means that coming back to work, as it was said by colleagues, it's most prerequisite to prevent children from poverty in the family. So in cooperation with Employment Committee, our committee also revised the situation, and of course the main findings are that still child poverty is quite a challenging issue in the European Union member states, and also that women stay as unprivileged group regarding payment and regarding balancing, reconciling the family and work life. So it's really attention to be paid. And once we talk about revision of Barcelona targets, yes, we suppose that there is a necessity to revise targets because we see that not all member states easily reach target of providing services to children, especially up to 3 years old. And as I mentioned previously, we expect that care strategy initiative will come in the third quarter of this year, and it will be accompanied by 2 recommendations on long-term care and also all on children, early child care and education services. So there is still ongoing discussion how it should be devised, in which clear direction. But in any case, we see that we should pay attention to prevention for falling into poverty. We have to develop once again repeat, affordable, quality and accessible services. So it's easy, just briefly so.
Merci beaucoup Rita. Christophe Valenti, tout à l'heure Nicolas Schmitt.
Thank you, Rita. Nicolas Schmitt said that social protection systems played a role as social stabilizer, especially because they set up part-time unemployment in France. We've seen that in France very much during the COVID crisis, but what role did that play in France to fight against poverty? Well, part-time activity, we say now. Part-time employment rather than part-time unemployment. Chômage partiel, activité partielle. A lot of European countries have set up such systems following the crisis in 2008 and 2009. It was a very generous program. We spent 12 billion euros. So you have to multiply this twofold in order to get the share of the government, and threefold if you want to know how much money was spent. So it's about 45 billion euros just for part-time activity. All countries did that in Europe because in 2008 and 2009, during the crisis, it had destroyed job markets very much. And when you destroy a job market, it's always the people with the most fragile jobs who are hit. And it took us 10 years to recover from that. So choices were made in March or April. The state took a loan of 2 billion in March or April, and it was targeted at all French employees. You have 19 million people working in the private sector. At least 11 million of them had at least a little bit of part-time activity. And at the end of April, it was even more than that. Plus, it's been extended. Yes, these systems have been extended, of course, but now we have changed gears, really, because part-time activity was about 30 million euros, and now it's 15 billion. So you see that today it's about 200, 300, 400,000 euros, let's say, for 2022. Of course, provided that the economic forecasts are confirmed. It, of course, has nothing to do with what it used to be, but where it was very useful, and actually it was surprising what happened during the crisis. We had much less job destructions than in a normal year. It was actually half the number. So it was half the number of jobs destroyed than in a typical year. So it means that jobs have been well protected and everybody was well protected. But of course, part-time activity was mostly made available to small companies, and it mostly targeted jobs for which it was not possible to work from home. You know, it was not executives and managers. It was mostly people in small companies who did not have to be mobilized like the second-line workers that we're talking about, but who couldn't work from home. So it was a very specific population, and it protected everybody. But then the question that comes to mind now is that those jobs which were not destroyed, will they be destroyed with a delayed effect in the near future or not? And it was a very targeted intervention of the state, and it was completely new. We shifted paradigm because we now have reached a situation where the government actually pays for partial inactivity of companies, and especially companies who are going to be impacted by the war in Ukraine. It's going to be the same. They will be able to set up part-time activity schemes. But in that case, in the case of the COVID, it was a very general thing. Thank you very much. Before we take questions from the people with us in the room, I'd like to hear from you, Martina, about the war in Ukraine, because it's been touched upon this morning very quickly. When you talk about poverty, it's hard not to think about this population, especially women and children, fleeing from the country. You are closer than we are in France, so of course you must keep a close eye on that. How can we take all these people on board, these children and women who've lost everything?
Well, it's true that in the Czech Republic right now is approximately 250,000 people from Ukraine. 75% are women, and they have children with them. So there could be also 100,000 children right now. We see that the crucial is to integrate people from Ukraine into society, to provide them services, education for the children, and help them to participate on the labor market. That's why we prepare and adopt new law on Ukraine, which provide them with a status, so they have a health insurance, the right for the education, and also benefits, support from the benefits. We also make it more easier to participate on the labor market for this refugee from Ukraine, and we provide them household accommodation. We provide them accommodation in a state capacities, and also in a private household. There's a system like this. We also right now we also focus on training and to support them so they could reach on a qualified position on the labor market, because the problem is that they usually don't have the specific documents about the education, or there is problem with the language. So we try to focus on to learn them quickly the Czech language, and we also made the simplification with the certificates, etc. Right now we are trying to, in the context of this debate, we try to increase the capacity of kindergartens, children's group, and schools, and also support the children in a participation in this, so they learn Czech and try to also overcome the stress from the fleeing their homes, so like this.
Rita, vous souhaitiez ajouter quelque chose également.
So Rita, you also wanted to add something.
Maybe I will talk not in capacity as SPC, but I will talk as a representative of Lithuania, and we also have border with Belarus, and we have people coming And of course, you need to see eyes of these children. You need to see this sadness, this loneliness, and especially it's very, very difficult to accommodate, to find accommodation for these unaccompanied, especially minors, because people, young children from care houses are coming accompanied. 40 children accompanied by 2 or 3 carers. So it's very important. And also we try to involve our NGOs and to create, how to say, coordination system of acceptance of all these flows and all these people. What I want to mention finally is that we even introduced permission to Ukrainians to work without any without any preconditions, without any requirement of national language. They can work for 2 years. They have permission to work for 2 years. And for instance, Ukrainian women come to public employment service and they help to employ people who come, Ukrainians who come and try to get a job. So we try to integrate, like my colleague said, we try to integrate these people into society, and of course, it's in the worst sense of words. We were a bit trained by last year intervention by Belarus, meaning sending migrants through the border. So it's really a huge and challenging issue for Europe and of course to many member states who directly suffer at the moment this very big problem of society as a whole. Thank you.
Yes, it's very difficult to find the words to describe that, and France, of course, is also showing its solidarity to Ukrainian families and children. So there are no questions from the auditorium and those people following remotely. What about the people here in the room? The gentleman over there has a question. So I have 2 questions. Can you hand a mic to the gentleman, please? First of all, the gentleman over there, and then... And also, could you say who you are, please? Thank you. Jean de la Serre, president of the CNSA, former president of the CNSA, and I've now become president of a very populous region in the north of France. I wanted to say a couple of words on the fact that this problem of returning to work is associated with financial poverty, and this is something that the departments in France know well. It's a problem that have a heavy impact. And I've seen that when I came to the CNSA, this is managed in silo, and we can see the effects of the managed in silo on the results. You can't try to deal with the health problem without thinking about support. The French government had set up a couple of years ago a policy of subsidies and strategies to fight against poverty and also getting back to work. But many departments took advantage of those subsidies to reconnect with the job officers, to create these economic teams. So this was between the employment officer and the department, because one was looking for jobs for these people and the other side was trying to find a way of guarding the children, and also finding housing and dealing with the other problems that may exist, difficulties linked to mobility, for example. And we've had some very good results from this scheme. It was a win-win situation, so because the person went back into a job, so this meant less money in terms of RSA for the department, and that money could be invested elsewhere. So this policy working in silos, this is something which really does penalize us very greatly. And when we try to have a cross-cutting vision of things, it's much easier to achieve results. Another example, which is very quickly, is that if you have a population which is in difficulty, so prisoners, for example, so in prison, and so basically this is men, 90% to the tune of men. So we try to get these people back into a job. And so if we were to do that, we would find a balance for the families. And this would be a way of stopping them from committing new crimes if they were to get back into a job. So unless you want to react to Mr. Villa. So just to comment on this, I agree with what has been said. So one of the subjects that we had noted was that for a number of years, for reasons which I don't want to criticize, we had these credits for inserting people back into jobs, and that credit has gone down. And so the people that you described found their situation even more difficult. Christopher Valenti? So just a couple of words, and I'd just like to thank the speaker. I agree with you. So we have to, the challenge of supporting these people. So I have a lot of experience with these systems. And so of course, once you find a job, you have to keep that job. And also the work done by the job office. These people need creches as well for their children. So it's a major challenge, and you're completely right about that. So it's a real problem that we really do need to tackle head on. Thank you. You had a question over there, the gentleman over there.
This one will be in English. Oh.
Okay. And can you present you, please? Your name?
Yes, of course.
Thank you
so much. Johannes Eisenbart from the German Health Insurance Funds. You briefly mentioned in your panel discussion the COVID pandemic. And it has really reminded us on the close link of social status and also income to health status. So that is lower income or poverty is also closely linked to bad health sometimes. So how do you address this very critical issue? And the second thing would be coming back to unemployment. In Germany, we do have specialized prevention programs for the unemployed. So do you have any experiences or opinions on that, how to address the health status of unemployed people? Thank you.
So questions which could go, so getting back to work, so that what happens in Germany, and there's a second question. Does anybody want to take the second question? Christophe Valenti. So I'm going to paraphrase and contradict an eminent French politician who said we've tried everything. No, we haven't tried everything. We need to try everything, because that's not the case yet. So the issue, well, in France, I don't know whether I can say this actually, but we have some good habits and bad habits. But there's no continuity in terms of our ideas. In terms of job seekers, we have plans for fighting unemployment. And so this tries to address the issue of training, long-term unemployment. And of course, we have plans which are very segmented, and then service offerings for getting people into jobs. We work with the regions and departments. We work with the handicap structures. So lots of different segmented structures which are for particular policies. But perhaps we need a more global vision of things, a more holistic vision of things. This was raised by the candidates in the presidential election. We need more coordination rather than targeting these measures. So let's include the issue of health, which is something new for the unemployed, the issue of the family as well, which isn't very well known, also the issue of competences, which has led to some ambitious plans. So a more holistic vision of things rather than what we have today. Social protection, which is more transversal and more holistic. Thank you very much. Rita, do you want to answer the gentleman's question? Or Martina? Perhaps Martina.
I'm not sure what to exactly say. In the Czech Republic, you have a health insurance. It's not connected with employment or unemployment. It's compulsory to pay some money to the state for health insurance, but if you don't pay it, you are still insured. You just could have a debt, but you still have the insurance, so it's like this.
Okay, Rita?
Rita, do you want to add something?
Really, I just maybe echo my colleagues that we need to have a holistic approach. But in any case, when some measures were introduced during the COVID pandemic, some measures proved to be retained and as sufficient to be prolonged and even kept. So, yes, I guess we do not have one single model for decisions, but in any case there are some solutions which can be used. So briefly.
Merci Rita. On a le temps encore pour 2 questions. Donc.
So we've got the time to take 2 more questions. There's one from the lady here, and perhaps another person. Sorry, there's no microphone. There's no microphone. Gertrude Austin. I'm a lecturer at Warsaw University, and I'm also the president of an institution for social security in Poland. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to quite simply say that so for 4 weeks now we've had war in Europe, and also we must look at the Polish situation. In Poland, we have 2.5 million people who have come into our house, and I do say our house. So during this period, we have done many things. New legislation, new laws have been introduced in terms of preparing and offering the possibility to these people for getting a job, for having social coverage. So 2 million people that now require social protection. So lots of things have been done in that respect. It's a new phenomenon in terms of solidarity because it's a new model of protection. These are people who have been rejected. So we have shown a lot of solidarity with these people, as have other countries, and it is really crucial to have that solidarity at this time. Because if you're protected and but there will be many more problems coming up in the coming weeks and months. So this is what you're saying is that you require help. Is because of your geographic situation, you have taken in many refugees, and so you do need help. What would you like to see, therefore? We need to discuss things. We need to talk about the next flows of migrants. So we need to take into account migrants at the European level then. Yes. Any other questions, comments from the auditorium? We don't have anybody on WhatsApp? No. Oh, you? No, we have a gentleman here. Good morning. Christian Julis, Vice President of the National Fund for Family Benefits, and a representative from a company as well, private company. Now, without going into trade union issues, so we have to remain responsible in terms of these issues. I've seen in a macro sense, but also locally, that one of the difficulties today is to bring in the employers and get them in touch with their potential workers. And so each day I'm surprised and shocked, and we all have a responsibility to play here. But I'm shocked by the fact that many people are increasingly far removed from the job market, whereas there are hundreds of thousands of jobs that are still vacant. And the crisis has highlighted that there are even more job opportunities in some sectors. So perhaps it's about attractiveness of the jobs. So we mentioned that briefly with those people who, when we mentioned childcare, but also the idea of work itself, which is something which provides dignity and value, being involved in society. Now, this is not a political comment that I'm making, but I really do have noticed that there are two worlds that don't converge, and I think we're all trying to create that link. It's up to companies who say, well, you know, I can't find the workers, I can't find the employees. This is what somebody said this morning. There's some people who won't even sign up to the job office. But then we have to look at what the company's needs and those people who are far removed from the job market. But you're very right about that. Does anybody want to comment, react to that? Let's go ahead. And then I think that we'll close this session.
Thank you.
Pour aller déjeuner, vous avez tout à fait raison.
To go to lunch, as you rightly said.
There is sometimes a question of tax and benefit incentives as well, and there are a lot of conditions why these supply and demand does not match, and a lot of possible solutions. And we have to put efforts into digitalization and accessibility of employment service first. Second, as I said, tax incentives to work, not how to say. Okay, you understand what I have
Yes.
in mind. Third, these wages should be adequate, and we talk about a decent pay, decent wages. So a lot. It's a system of incentives to be matched with this demand, and I guess member states work in own directions. But a lot of measures can be possible and affordable, and for instance, Recovery and Resilience Facility also provides some possibility to develop this employment services and to develop into direction of digitalization and accessibility. So I fully support your position that it's really sometimes a lot of free play. Vacancies and quite high unemployment, and there is no match.
Merci Rita, merci.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you too. There's a last comment. So just some extra comments. Well, one of the difficulties is that a whole swathe of those people who are concerned by this are really very far removed from the job market. So this is so this is something different that the people at the job office have to do. So here, these are people are very far removed, as I said, and so there has to be specific measures for those people and people trained to get these people back into the job market. Thank you very much. Thank you to all five of you. Thank you for your questions and your attention.